You cannot feel yourself into feeling abundant, loved, magnetic, or any of these things, but you can create a habit of feeling these things and making them stick. Because the problem with a lot of people is like, no, you just need to feel worthy, you need to feel abundant, blah, blah, blah. And then you see that over time, these things don't stick. But you can make a habit out of these things. And why is it important to make a habit out of these things? It's because your brain is not familiar with these things that you want to create when you want to change something. And that's why I feel like for so many people, and for me included, it was a long time ago when I started changing certain things and certain beliefs in my mind, it was very hard for me to change because I was going about it the completely wrong way. So if you want to change the way that you feel, you need to start seeing it from the perspective of, okay, my brain feels safe in certain ways that I feel about myself. I feel safe feeling unworthy. I feel safe feeling not abundant. I feel safe feeling unloved. I feel safe in all of these things because my trauma created me that way, things that happened in my past, etc. Whatever it is, some things that happen in your past, you don't need to even know what these things are, because I feel like a lot of people are like, no, you need to know like what the origin story is. You don't need that. That's not relevant because that's not going to help you change. You can just, like, if you're curious about that, you can think about that, but it's not necessary for this process. You just need to know, like, okay, what is my default mode? What is something that my brain always kind of defaults to whenever I think about myself? Like, for example, let's say you don't get invited to your best friend's birthday party. If your default like thought pattern is like, oh, it's because she doesn't love me enough, it's because I'm not important enough, it's because blah, 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 then you don't feel worthy. And that's like your default thing that your brain is always bringing you back to because it's familiar. Not because it's good for you, but because it's familiar to you. And that's the problem. So what you're gonna do is, instead of feeling familiar with being unworthy, you're gonna train your brain to feel familiar with being worthy. And you can apply this to like anything else, like abundant, loved, whatever you want. I can make other videos in like specific areas, but today we're gonna talk about worth, because I feel like that's kind of one that englobes everything else, and it's gonna help you with like abundance, with love, with deservingness, and everything else. The first thing that you're gonna do is you will have to change your story. Think about all the situations that usually make you feel unworthy, or in what moments do you usually default back to the way of thinking of like, oh, I didn't get invited for this because I'm unworthy, oh, I didn't get this promotion because I was unworthy, or oh, I'm not gonna go after this job because I'm unworthy, blah, blah, blah. Think about all of the situations that have ever made you feel unworthy, because you will probably see a pattern in like maybe what areas of your life you may be feeling more unworthy, because sometimes people feel unworthy maybe just with money or just with this or just with that, and maybe more or less with other areas, because if you feel unworthy in one area, it's very typical that you feel unworthy in other areas. But I feel like some people maybe only feel unworthy in like a few areas, but then in others they feel really worthy. So you have to analyze in your life, like in what areas do you usually default back into feeling like, oh, I didn't get this because I wasn't worthy. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna change your story, and you're gonna try to apply that every time that something happens in your physical reality. So, for example, if your default thing is like, oh, I didn't get invited to this birthday party because I'm unworthy, your new one, this is the one that I used, you can make up another one, it can be like your mantra, your slogan, call it whatever you want, was like, oh, I'm so worthy of having something good happen to me that the universe has maybe something else better prepared for me, and that's why I couldn't go to this birthday party, for example. Or, oh, I didn't get this job promotion, but it's because there's a better job out there for me. I always think, or I train myself to think that if I didn't get something and someone wasn't interested in me, or like a company wasn't interested in me, or I didn't get a house that I wanted, it's because there was someone better or something better out there for me. And I was always right. I always found a better house. I always found a better partner. I always found better friends. I always found better everything. Because then you start training your mind to believe that. So this is very like simple. It's not easy. Simple does not mean easy, because applying this means that you need to kind of like get into the habit of making yourself think this every time something happens to you. And this is something that only you can control, like how many times a day you're going to do it, or how little times a day you're going to do it. So you can, like, I would say my recommendation is like put as many reminders in your house, in your computer, in your phone, in like set alarms on your phone like every few hours with this little mantra, whatever it is, but remind yourself through the day. I feel like something that's really good is like maybe writing it at least once a day in the morning, like when you do gratitude, or in your journal, or on the way to work on your phone or something like that, so that you make the habit. It's something that you need to be doing every day, that you need to constantly remind yourself of, because, and here I'm gonna say something that maybe some people don't agree with, but there's nothing wrong with like failing one day or forgetting to do it one day, or like maybe after like a few weeks your body will try to push back. Your body, or like your brain, will try to like push back because you have been trained for like however many years, like 20, 30, whatever, to believe or feel comfortable in not feeling worthy. So you're bringing this new information that you're gonna be forcing into your brain. Like, no, this is the new thing that's familiar to us, and we need to like overwrite this old information that we have. Your brain is going to push back because your brain will constantly try to bring you back to like, no, the familiar thing is feeling unworthy, and I'm going to make you feel that. So this war will go on for like a little bit of time, which is completely normal. It's normal that you maybe have a few weeks where you feel really worthy, and then you have a shitty week, and then you just revert back to the old ways of thinking. But this is where it's important, and that's why I say that this is a habit. You need to force yourself to write this sentence down every day, because even if you don't believe it, you're writing it down every day. You just ignore your brain when it's telling you like, no, this is not comfortable. I'm gonna give you like a lot of examples in your life why this is not true or something like that. You keep on writing it every day, even if you don't believe it. Because if you keep on doing it every day, at some point you will believe it. But you just need to make a habit out of it. You need to like, you will outrun, let's say, like the power that your brain has with the habit power that this one has. You know what I mean? Because this one, was said at some point in your childhood or something like that. But this one will outrun this one by habit, by just like you persisting. Because if you persist, you will win. The second thing that really helped me is, aside from having that little habit of writing that sentence down, or just reminding yourself, or having it as like a screensaver or something like that, also, I feel like this is gonna help you a lot too, is choose a habit that you can do every day that maybe takes 5 to 10 minutes that you can do daily that makes you feel worthy. Because as I always said, like affirmations are really great, they're really powerful, but affirmations without actions are useless. Because if you have an affirmation and there's an action that ties in with this affirmation that you do every day, it gets ingrained better in your brain. You know what I mean? Like you cannot tell yourself like, oh, I am so loved, and then someone comes in and gives you like a hug and you're like, no, get away from me, because that's just going against what you just told yourself. You know, you need to kind of accept that love and be like, oh, I am loved, and you accept that hug, for example, you know? So this is the same thing. Find something that's really, really important to you. It could be like getting yourself like a nice coffee every day. It could be meditating for 5 minutes because you know it's something that does you really well. It could be going out for a run for 10 minutes. It could be anything. Anything that just makes you feel good. Then you're like, oh, I am worthy of giving myself this time to feel good, to feel better, to do whatever it is. And then every time that you do that thing, you remind yourself like, oh, I'm worthy of this time. It could be like waking up a bit earlier to make yourself like the nicest breakfast ever. It could be something different every day, but I feel like sticking with the same thing, at least for me, it was easier because it was something that I was like, even if some days I didn't really feel like doing it, or some days I was like, oh, I'm not really feeling worthy by doing this for myself, since it was something that was really good for me, which in my case was preparing myself like a really healthy breakfast every morning and taking the time to make that and making some snacks for work and things like that. It was something that taught my brain of like, you're worthy of this, you're worthy of this, you're worthy of this. So find something. I mean, you can like, if you don't have any ideas, just let me know in the comments and I can give you some ideas. But it has to be something that you really like, that you really enjoy, and something that takes you like the smallest amount of time possible. Because if it's something that's like super complicated, it's gonna be easier for you to like talk yourself out of doing it. So something that's super simple, that doesn't take like more than 5 to 10 minutes every day. It could be even 2 minutes. It doesn't need to be. Like you can even just like have a lot of water in the morning because that's something that's really good for you. Could be the simplest thing. Just find something that makes you feel worthy. The next thing, and this one is going to be a little bit more complicated or more difficult depending for who, but I feel like this will also get easier over time, and is you need to choose situations that make you feel worthy, and you need to go for things that make you feel worthy. For example, as I said earlier, let's say that you really like a guy or a girl and you really want to go for them, but you're like, oh, they would never look to me because they're like too handsome for me or something like that. You need to try, because if you try, you're telling yourself like, oh, I'm worthy of this person. Even if it doesn't go well, then you tell yourself your little mantra of like, oh, something better is on the way for me. But at least you tried, which means like you gave yourself permission to feel worthy of that, if that makes sense. And if it was, for example, with a job situation, you want to change jobs because you're not happy with your job, and you're like, okay, let me just go for this like position that I'm not good enough for, but I'm just gonna do it anyway. Because if you go for that position, even if you don't get it, even if you're actually like not even that good for it anyway or something, you will tell yourself with that you were worthy of that position, even if you don't get it. And if you don't get it, what do you say to yourself? Something better is on the way. Completely fine. So you need to kind of like put yourself constantly into situations that will make you feel worthy, and you need to take actions that make you feel worthy. And as I said, you also need to spend time or put yourself in other situations like with friends, family, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, that make you feel worthy. Because the problem with this is the following, is like you can tell yourself you're the most worthy person in the planet, but if you have a partner who cheats on you and who does really disrespectful things to you and you tolerate that, you're telling yourself that you're not worthy of a better treatment. So obviously this is hard. This is where it usually gets hard, because whenever it's like something that has to do with boundaries with other people, that's where it got really hard for me, and I know that's where it gets really hard for a lot of people. But I'm gonna say something. Over time, whenever I've been working on like my self-worth and on feeling worthy, the more I started implementing these things, you know, when I started surrounding myself with better friends, better job, better this, the things that I was not worthy of, the things that were like below my worth, they just ended up falling away. Like I had, some of you know, I had a really toxic relationship up until like 6 months ago, something like that. And up until then, I had like really great job, really great friends, really great everything. My ex, who was the only toxic or like not of my worth thing in my life, he just fell off of my life. Why? Because I had been working on my self-worth so much that he just at some point saw that he was not fitting my life anymore. So I didn't even have to break up with him. He just like decided to leave my life, because I was like, slowly and over time, you will set your standards higher. You will believe that you deserve more. You will believe that you're worthy of more. So you will build yourself up. It doesn't need to be a thing of like, oh, I'm gonna stop talking to everyone in my life and just stop having friends and like block all these people out of my life because they're all toxic or they're all treating me less than. It's fine that you sometimes have people in your life that maybe don't treat you like as the best thing ever, because sometimes it will take you some time to get rid of certain people or to be ready to like let go of certain people. But that's completely fine, because that's everyone's journey, and everyone's journey is completely different in that sense. So don't feel guilty of like, if you're with a partner and you're working through things, just kind of like go back to yourself and be like, am I worthy of more? And just kind of like think about that. Make yourself list of what you deserve in friends and a partner and everything, because the moment you start kind of like putting that onto paper, for example, and the person who's next for you or the friends that are next to you don't really give you everything that you deserve and everything that you give to people, because I'm thinking that if you're seeing this video, you're like me, who is someone who like gives a lot, does the best that they can for their friends. So like, if you don't have friends that do the same thing for you, they will eventually fall off if you start valuing yourself more. And just by doing the first two or three steps that I told at the beginning, you will start valuing yourself more, and these people will end up falling off of your life, so you don't really need to worry about it too much. So these are all the tips that I have. I hope that they help. I hope that you start trying to get into the habit of feeling worthy, because as I said, it's something that you need to make into a habit. It's something that sometimes you will feel like a robot when you're doing this. Sometimes you will feel like a robot when you're maybe doing like your morning ritual that you decided that you're worthy of, or writing your morning affirmation or something like that. But it doesn't matter. You need to just like persist, because the more you persist, the more like that's just gonna kind of like get ingrained in your life and be part of like your new familiar feeling, you know, and you're gonna stop feeling familiar with being unworthy, and you're gonna start feeling familiar with being worthy, which to me, like now that I think about it and I've changed that, it's really weird. And whenever, for example, like now a guy or a new friend or something treats me with disrespect, I immediately feel the ick. And before I used to feel turned on about these things. Right now I feel the ick because it's like, ooh, instability. I don't like that. Like I'm not worthy of that, you know? So this is a great way to train yourself to feel familiar with the way that you want to feel, and just let go of all of the trauma and all of the parts of yourself that you don't want to feel familiar with.